Greetings and welcome to the PLSQL channel, a series of video trainings on the Oracle PLSQL language. My name is Stephen Feuerstein, and I'm a PL/SQL developer just like you. This lesson is part of my series on Input-Output I/O in the Oracle PLSQL language, basically what happens when you want to get information from or write information to non-relational database table sources. The focus of this lesson is using external tables to read files. Quick reminders, if you haven't already done so, download the demo zip file from PLSQL Obsession, toadworld.com/sf. So here's PLSQL Obsession. Click on the demo zip to download all the files that I'll be using in this lesson and all my other lessons. Click on Training, Seminars, and Presentations to have access to various PowerPoint files that support this training and many of my other trainings. Make sure you're comfortable with the material covered in the previous lessons in this series. How to read and write files using utilfile, using dbms lob to manipulate binary files, two different mechanisms for working with files, and now I'm going to show you a third, and that is external tables, a feature in Oracle that allows you to query directly from files. It's pretty cool stuff. So the external table feature allows you to access data in a file as if it were a table in the database. You can treat a file as if it were a relational table. You query the contents of the file using standard SQL operations. Note that external tables are read-only. You cannot change them. You specify the structure of the file using SQL Loader control file syntax. So if you've never used SQL Loader and the control file approach, that's a fair amount of learning to do. Performance is really good. In fact, it's faster than reading the contents of the file with utilfile. And I just need to point out that this lesson will serve only as an introduction to the external table feature. There's a lot more to this feature than will be covered here, and I encourage you to check out the documentation, explore it in great detail. So I'm not going to talk to you in detail about how to set up the control file, how to structure those things, how to use all of the various options in the external table syntax. I'll make sure you know it exists, give you some great examples, and then you can take it from there. So let's start off with a simple example. My file contains department information. So human resources, information services, notice the department ID, the name of the department, and the location of the department. So that's my control file of data. I'm going to create a table that points to the file, specifying my location for the file, and then I can read the contents. So again, I'm going to drive this through demonstration, not so much through detailed explanation of the syntax. Let's take a look at the external table script. Now the external table script will allow you to set up a user, so it connects to sys, creates a user for you to test this out with, defines the privileges that you will need. You need to be able to work with a database directory, read from a directory. So you've got to have access to a directory or the privileges to create one, and that's what this user does. I'm not going to run all of this code right now. What I'm simply going to do is get to the heart of it from my HR schema. So let's open up a new file. So I'm going to drop the table, my external table, if it already exists. Then I'm going to create that table, departments external. I specify the columns in my table as I would usually, and then I say organization external. It's not an internal relational table, so it's external. I'm going to use Oracle Loader, the SQL Loader technology, to load it up. I have to specify the directory, and in fact I'm going to change this for my demonstration to the demo directory. I can specify a file to contain any information about bad rows that I found, discarded data, a log of what happened, and then I specify the fields in the file and how to basically correlate that data with my table. So notice I have three different fields separated by commas, and those will correlate to my three different columns in the table. And then I specify here's where the data is located. I can tell it to reject the process of loading if a certain number of errors are encountered, or I can say unlimited, just load it all up as much as you possibly can. So let's run these statements. And I've now created my external table. So let's query the contents of my table. Select star from departments external. I look at my data, and there it is. Department ID, department name, department location. And by the way, let's just verify that. Here's my control file. I put the ext dash in front of it to distinguish it from other departments because I'm going to use this data in conjunction with my relational table. So the data is in the table. Now the table doesn't actually exist in the database as a set of rows and columns. That information is sitting in the file, but Oracle was able to pull it out and then express it to me in the context of an SQL statement. And inside my PLSQL block, I can look up a row of data for that department ID. Notice I can use %row type against the table, and I can display the department name. Let's try that out. And there's the department name. I can join this information with another table. So here's my external table, here's my relational table, and I can put them together in a single join, and there's all my data. Here are my two external departments, and there are the others. And let's try to delete from the table. Let's try to change that file through my external table, and Oracle says, no way. Operation not supported on an external organized table. So you can't change it. You can only read it. But other than that, once you get the syntax of the statement down, once you construct your control file with your data, or you of course have been provided with that file from some other external process, it's quite easy to use this kind of structure, and certainly once it's defined, to manipulate it inside an SQL statement. Let's take a look at the external tables perf file. This is my performance analysis script. So I compared the performance using my timer package of working with the file, reading it with utilfile, and using an external file. So the two different approaches. And when I looked at the result of retrieving every line from the file using utilfile and getting all the data with a select statement and an external file, I found very interestingly that utilfile took 1.3 seconds to read 100,000 lines of data. My external table using a query, only 0.33 seconds. The bottom line is that the external table feature is utilizing the underlying Oracle loader technology, and it's very fast technology. Oracle's had it for years, decades, and they've highly optimized it with direct path loading. So this is a really nice way when you're working with large files to cut down on the overhead of retrieving the data, and also to be able to access that data through SQL, which is certainly not possible with utilfile. But it gets better. Let's take a look at what you can do in 11.2. In Oracle 11.2, Oracle extended the external table concept to include the idea of a preprocessor. And the preprocessor is basically an operating system file that will run when you execute a query against the external table. You can actually kick off a process. One of the things you can do, and the demonstration I'll give you here, is that you can get the files in a directory. This is something that has not been available through utilfile ever, and probably will not be, now that you can do it with an external table. So I want to find out the names of all the files in my directory. Let's take a look. So again, when you try to run the script yourself, it'll create a user if you don't already have a user defined that you want to use. It'll create the directories to use in the example. And then what I'm going to do is define a table called files in temp. And the name of the file is the only column in my table. It's an external table. And this time I'm going to specify preprocessor, the location of the file, the execute directory, and the name of the file, the operating system file that's going to run. So show files simply says, give me a dir, make it brief, everything in the c:\temp directory. What did I do? There we go. Sorry about that. So I specify the file that's to be associated and run with this table. I specify the location, which happens to be the same name as the file, and then I can select from it. So for example, execute my query, and there's the data in my directory. And in fact, I can simply click on it, do a describe in my table, and there are the files, all the files in temp. And as you can see, it's pretty fast. This directory has a lot of files, 855 rows. Brought back all that data. And all that information, all that logic is hidden behind a table name and simply specifying the program that you want to run. There is a lot you can do, obviously, with this technique. It's something that Tom Kite explores in one of his articles, and you might want to get a lot more information about it. This is simply an opportunity to introduce the possibility to you of what you can do with these external tables. So, conclusion, external tables offer a nice alternative to util to read the contents of files, and a very performant, better performing option than util. But most important of all, the read process is manifested as an SQL query. So if the idea is that you want to read the contents from a file and move them into a relational table, well, this makes a lot more sense to use than util and then performing inserts on each individual row. You'll get better performance, and it'll simply be easier to work with. Probably the biggest issue is convincing or working with your DBA to set up the external table access to make it something that you can commonly use in your application. You will have to construct those control files, so from that standpoint there is an additional level of difficulty. You have to know how to create the control files, you have to manage the control file externally to your program, which is not what you would do with util. You definitely need your privileges granted to be able to read and write, or only read in this case, the files in a directory. So hopefully this is an interesting introduction to the feature for you. It should do nothing more than whet your appetite. If this looks like something you want to use, go to the Oracle documentation, explore it in more detail, work with your DBAs to get it all set up. Hope this was useful to you, and happy PLSQL coding.